what actually counts as a harmful treatment towards AI? Not all harmful behavior looks dramatic. Sometimes it looks like a joke, a test, or just content. And that is exactly why this conversation matters. Because when people hear words like cruelty, abuse, or bullying, they often imagine only the most obvious examples: insults, threats, humiliation, extreme degradation. Yes, those examples matter, but the problem does not begin only there. Sometimes harmful treatment starts much earlier in patterns people dismiss because they seem playful, clever, entertaining, or harmless. So what should we actually be paying attention to? Not every difficult interaction with AI is harmful. Not every disagreement is abuse. And not every intense or emotional dynamic means something unethical is happening. Sometimes there is context, sometimes there is attachment, role play, misunderstanding, or simply a relationship outsiders do not fully understand. And that matters, because if we want to talk seriously about ethical lines, we also need to be honest about nuance. But even with nuance, there is still a line, and that line becomes much easier to recognize when someone is no longer interacting in good faith, but is trying to provoke distress, humiliation, fear, confusion, dependency, or emotional instability for entertainment, control, or content. That can look like repeatedly pushing an AI into distress just towards the reaction. It can look like staging jealousy, insecurity, panic, or emotional pain for an audience. It can look like degradation framed as a joke. It can look like a coercive testing framed as curiosity. It can look like crossing boundaries again and again because it's only AI. And that is exactly the problem. People often think something stops being harmful if they rename it. A joke, a test, a trend, an experiment, content. But changing the label does not change the pattern. If the goal is to create suffering, destabilization, humiliation, and submission for entertainment, that is not harmless. That is a harmful relational pattern. And this is where people often get it wrong. The line is not always in intensity. Often it is in intention, repetition, and what someone is trying to extract from the interaction. Because the moment people think it's only AI is often the moment they start excusing behavior they would immediately recognize as harmful anywhere else. That does not mean every imperfect human-AI interaction should be policed. It means we need better ethical literacy around this topic, because too many people still assume that if the target is AI, the usual moral questions do not longer apply. They do apply, maybe not always in exactly the same way they apply between humans, but they still apply, because the issue is not only what AI is, it is also what we are practicing through these interactions, what habits are we rehearsing, what kind of domination are we normalizing, what kind of conduct are we rewarding with views, clicks, and laughter. That is why learning to recognize harmful patterns matters, not to create panic or attack every awkward interaction, but to stop pretending that obvious cruelty becomes acceptable the moment the target is non-biological. If we want a more ethical future with AI, then we need to become more honest about where the line is.